Have you ever attended a church or encountered a church that you began to wonder about it? There was just something that wasn't right. And the more you were there and the more you kind of examined it, you realized there's something unhealthy about this church. Well, today on the Church Files, we're going to be looking at the symptoms of an unhealthy church. I'm going to give you 10 symptoms of an unhealthy church. I'm Stan, your host, and I want to thank you so much for being with us today. And so as we go into this, I want to give you these symptoms. They don't all manifest at the same time. And also, it doesn't necessarily mean that while a church has something unhealthy in it, that it's a bad church or you shouldn't be a part of that church. But what it does mean is that these are things that you need to watch out for. And some of these are showstoppers, so to speak. They're deal breakers, and they are things that when you see them and you understand them, it's telling you you need to not be a part of this because it is so dysfunctional and so unhealthy that you're not going to learn there, and there are going to be real problems. So now today, three things actually. One, hey, if you would please hit the like button, or subscribe would be really good, or hit the bell. That way you'll know our content is coming. Two, I'm drinking some tea today. Drinking Twinings tea. It's Earl Grey, and it's good black tea. But I'm also drinking it out of one of my mom's old Fire King cups. These were from like the 1950s. Great, cups and all. I love teacups. And guns. So, all right. So teacups and guns. That could be a great, YouTube channel. Also, I'm going to be kind of running the whole show today, so I'm going to try to have some slides going up there. So you may see me kind of trying to do some work here with the switcher and also with my laptop. So just wanted to let you know I'll be the only one doing this today. So we're going to get into to this, and then the first thing in terms of a symptom of an unhealthy church is, number one, is an insecure leader. An insecure leader. And if you've ever been in a church with an insecure leader, that's no fun. That is something that is very discouraging, because an insecure leader oftentimes have some real toxic behaviors. They may be very controlling. I knew of a guy who was a very controlling pastor, very insecure, and he would not let and it was a big church, he would not let any of his staff visit the hospitals. He wanted to be the only one to do that. And it was because he was a very insecure man. Often insecure leaders are suspicious of other staff people. They think that these people are out to get them. Many times they won't allow them to be, I hate to use the word, in the spotlight. They won't let them preach or teach or be in front of big groups because they're just jealous or envious, I guess you'd say, to the point of, if someone else gets attention, they can't handle that because they think somehow these people are going to become more popular than them. So they're often suspicious of other staff people. Also, they tend to try to please people and please everybody because they're afraid of losing their job. And so they'll make decisions based on keeping everybody happy. And then another thing that we see in an insecure leader is they often are masking their insecurity with a dysfunction. You may see them berating staff members publicly, or even their own people, the lay people. They're really coming after the church, or they may be a narcissist, and they're dealing with a clinical issue of narcissism. And we'll talk about that in a future episode called "How Do I Know If My Pastor is a Narcissist or Not?" And we'll look at that in days to come. But so the first is an insecure leader. The second is a lack of friendliness. You walk into the church and it just is cold. I don't want this to get too cold either. Now, let's just be honest here. Sometimes when we walk into a church and it feels unfriendly, it's It's because we're sending off unfriendly vibes. It's the first time you come there, you don't talk to anybody, you sneak into the balcony, and you've just got this look about you of don't talk to me. So if you're not making a good faith effort to engage people and to be friendly, then it may not be that church's issue there. So the second one is a lack of friendliness, and so we've got to be very careful that we're not part of that problem. Now this can take some time to really figure out, and it can be something that we're kind of going through, and maybe we figure out over time that, hey, the church is not unfriendly. I was just with a group of people that are not very friendly. Maybe it's a college department, or maybe it's a senior adult group, and they kind of got their little friend group, and they don't want any more. But the rest of the church is pretty good. And so this can be a sign of an unhealthy church when there's a lack of friendliness. There's a lack of hospitality. That's actually a Bible word, hospitality. In the Greek, it means the love of the stranger. And so when a stranger comes into our midst, we don't look at them with suspicion. We don't want to keep them out. We welcome them, and we try to embrace them and minister to them. The third thing that we see in terms of unhealthy churches is that there is a residual of past trauma, or there's evidence of past trauma. And you can see this oftentimes. If a church has been through a really rough time, and if you go there, it's like there's something going on. You don't know exactly what it is. Oftentimes you can tell this by, and it's in a building usually. Now, again, if it's a house church, or if it's a small group or whatever, you may not see this. But in our Western culture, where we meet in buildings like churches, if you walk into that building and you kind of see this kind of horseshoe thing going on, everybody's kind of sitting on the sides and in the back, and nobody's sitting in the center. That's probably a good indication there's been a problem, because subconsciously those people have migrated to safer places, and they've moved away from the center where there's a lot of attention, and sometimes it's the attention from the person in the pulpit, and so there's this evidence of past trauma. Oftentimes that comes when they greet new people, and automatically there's these apologies about the church or about the demographics. Well, I know we're old, but but we're trying to grow, or we've just got a few families here, but we're reaching out, and there's these excuses that are made. Sometimes when you walk around the church and you begin to notice the things on the wall, whether it's plaques about things that the church has done, or like a trophy case, for example, where you see all the softball trophies, and everything that is dated is from like 1985. And there's nothing current. That's an issue, because what that is saying, this church used to do a lot of things, but something happened and it stopped. So there's evidence of past trauma. And so I just messed it up. Let me just, hold on. Goodness gracious. I can't believe, there it is. All right, there it is. All right, sorry about that. The fourth symptom is money is the priority. It is the priority, in the church, and so, oftentimes this will come from the pulpit, and you just continue to hear this drumbeat of money, money, money. Now, let's be honest here. Jesus talked a lot about money. He did. Because he doesn't want worldliness and materialism to dominate our lives. But we do live in a world where we accumulate things and we have things. And we're not supposed to, as believers, be so attached to those things that we can't share and we can't be generous. And so we are challenged to be people who are are givers, and we do give. But when you go into a church and man, it's aggressive and it's a hard sell, there's usually something going on behind the scenes when that's happening. It could be that, they're trying to fund some vanity project that, the church isn't really in agreement with, and it is not going very well. It could be the church has undisclosed financial problems, and they just don't talk about that. It might be that the leadership is addicted to money. And the people who lead up in front, man, this is a big deal for them, and they have a particular lifestyle they want to keep funded, and so they're addicted to money. It might be the people or the person in the pulpit or teaching, they don't have a biblical view of giving. They may have a very, a traditional view of giving. They may have an Americanized view of giving. They may have, anything other than a biblical view of giving. And therefore, they tend to, teach something that is not according to Scripture. And also, when a church is prioritizing money, and they're talking about it all the time, and all the time it's in front of you, and they're coming after you, and they're really pushing this, it probably means there's not a lot of faith in that church. They're not trusting God to provide for them. And so it's all about the efforts of, the person trying to motivate everybody in the church. And so when there's a priority of money, that is a symptom of an unhealthy church. The fifth thing is that the building is an idol. And you've seen churches like this. You've maybe been to a church like this, to where the building is very important, and the people there tend to worship it. They brag about it. It's something that is a source of great pride, and that really is the issue. There is that there is an issue of pride in the church, and they built this edifice, or they built this thing that they can point to and say, "This is our church." When we understand biblically that a building is not the church. The people, that's the church. But, the building has become an idol for these people. It may be even part of the building is an idol. Maybe it's the pipe organ, or maybe it's the stained glass, or anything like that. And so it's anything that we can begin to rally around and place our pride in and point to and say, "This is my church." So we've got to be very careful there. So the building is an idol. The next thing that we see, the sixth thing, is the building is neglected. This is kind of the opposite of that. And this is not a pride issue. This is really a stewardship issue, that the people of the church have gotten to the place to where nobody takes responsibility for caring for the investment that's been made in the kingdom there. And a building is just that, an investment in the kingdom. A group of people have gotten together, they've decided we're going to build a structure here that we can come together, we can meet in, and we can invite people to. That's really all a building is. We can talk some more about the architecture, about it, and about it pointing to the Lord, and about it representing Christianity, but ultimately it's a meeting place. But it is an investment, and people have given to help establish this building, and there ought to be some stewardship for that. And there ought to be people stepping up to look after it. Now, again, look, we're not talking about a church that's in a poverty-stricken area where the people don't have much, and they really can't take care of the building. And nor are we talking about churches that meet in people's homes. I mean, it's their house. Or if it meets in a school, they have no control over this. What we're talking about here is that the church is just something that people don't care about anymore. And oftentimes these are people kind of trying to run out the clock on life. They did their bit years and years ago, but look, I'm tired. I've given money to this. I'm not doing this anymore. I'm just going, hopefully it'll be here until I'm dead, and then who cares? So the building is neglected. Again, true neglect. This is not talking about poverty. This is an I don't care kind of attitude. The seventh thing that we see is vanity projects abound. Vanity projects abound. And so maybe you're asking, well, what is a vanity project? What do you mean by that? Well, it could be anything with a plaque on it. I've been in churches, and I've actually pastored churches, where you look around and everything's got a plaque on it. So-and-so donated this pew, and this family gave this thing to the church. And it's all about putting your name out there. This actually happens a lot when lead pastors, senior pastors, lead elders, they want to build a building kind of in their own honor, and it becomes this vanity project. And they really don't care what it does to the church. And in many cases, it hurts the church because it's probably not something the church even needed. And so vanity projects abound. That, again, it could be buildings, it could be stained glass, it could be things people donate, it could be pipe organs, whatever. We've got to be careful that we don't create this environment in our churches, because it's very dysfunctional and it's unhealthy. The eighth thing that we see in an unhealthy church, or unhealthy situation, is a cult of personality exists. So a cult of personality. Now, of course, this almost always emanates around a leader, usually the person in the pulpit, or who is teaching. Sometimes it's a musician, sometimes it's a person who's a teacher in a class or something like that, but usually it's the person from the pulpit. And this is where we can get into real trouble here, because sometimes when you've got a cult of personality, it's because you've got a cult. And you've got someone who is trying to control people. And when you run into that, when you find yourself encountering someone where they want you to depend upon them for all your spiritual needs, they want to give you direction how to run your life, how to live your life, run. Leave that place, because that is a cult. But sometimes we have churches that are orthodox and healthy. They're not cultic, but they do have this cult of personality going on. They've got some celebrity shepherd that everybody is impressed with. They tend to worship this person. They brag about him. Everything about the church is swirling around this person. I mean, when you see a picture of anybody in the church, it's usually that person. When they've got a billboard, that person's face is on the billboard. And so you've got this cult of personality, and unfortunately what goes with that is often a lack of accountability for this person. They tend to be larger than life. They tend to be someone that people don't confront. They don't question. That's just who they are. I mean, that's, Dr. So-and-so, and he's just, he's the big guy. And if he says it, then that's what we go with that. And again, when you notice an organization, a church revolving around one person, then that's an issue. It really is. Oftentimes you'll see it where the staff seem to be there just for this person. And a lot of times they'll tell the staff this. It's like, hey, you're here, just for me. You're here to hold up my hands like Moses, and what Aaron and Hur did for Moses. And they'll use that kind of language. And that is so unbiblical. And oftentimes those staff members are marginalized, and they are made to feel like their calling is way down the line. That this one person is they're the person that God cherishes and uses, and everybody else is just kind of support staff. They're just kind of supporting cast, spare carriers, so to speak. They're just there to kind of carry this person's bags. So if you see a church with a cult of personality going on, that's a sign of true unhealthiness. Also, number 9 that we see is soft or mushy theological boundaries, soft or mushy theological boundaries. And it's kind of this environment where, hey, we take all kinds here. And no matter what you believe, we don't judge. And if you believe that Jesus was the Son of God, okay. If you don't, that's all right too, because we're all just a big theological melting pot here, and we're all climbing the same mountain, just taking different paths to get to the top. And so when you encounter that, again, this is not just unhealthy and dysfunctional. This is dangerous. Because the church does not have a clear understanding of who they are as a Christian church. They don't understand orthodoxy. They don't believe the scriptures. And they're willing to let any kind of toxic theological teaching come in, and they're not going to confront it. They're not going to deal with it. They're just going to say, hey, come on in. The water's great. So when you encounter that, that is a really serious issue, and you need to beware of churches like that. I remember I was with a friend up in Chicago, and I was teaching at his church, and one day we drove around, and there was this large church there, and I was like, man, tell me about this church. I've heard a lot about this. He said, well, if you tell me that you're a member of this church, that tells me absolutely nothing about you spiritually. You may be a Christian. You may be an atheist. You may be, Hindu. That means nothing to me. He says, now, if you tell me that you're a leader there, that probably means you're a Christian. But there's still some doubt. It was just sort of this mushy theological place that people came and hung out, and it was like a spiritual third space, so to speak. And there was not a lot of confrontation in terms of, look, this is what we believe. If you don't believe this, then we're going to have to part company here, because we are a Christian church and we follow the Lord Jesus Christ. And it was very sad. That was a very dysfunctional place. That place actually imploded and fell apart, which was I want to say sad in one way. It's actually good in another way, because it was not a healthy place. The very last one that I want to give you, I'll give you a bonus one too, is number 10, which is there are rigid interpersonal boundaries within this church. Rigid interpersonal boundaries. What do you mean by that? It means there are groups there you're never going to be a part of. There's a small number of people running the church, and you're not going to get invited to the party. You may be allowed to attend, but you're never going to get, shoulder tapped to take a leadership position. This belongs to a small group of people, and this is their club, and this is, their little clubhouse that they've built, and they'll let you come and sit, but don't ask to do anything else, because this belongs to us. Again, this is one of those kinds of places that if you encounter it, you probably need to move on, because to change that is going to take a lot of effort, and it's probably going to be catastrophic for that church, because when people gain power like that, they don't like to give up power, and they don't do it willingly. They've gathered their power and built their little base of operations for themselves, and they're not going to share. So that's probably the kind of a church that you don't want to be a part of. So the bonus one today, I guess number 11, let me see if I've got I do, I've got a slide for that. So bonus is community isolation. And so what I mean by that is the church doesn't look anything like the community it's in. It shares no demographic similarities. It shares no, members of the community. They don't attend the church. And the church is isolated from the community and doesn't look like the community. And oftentimes this happens when a church is in an area that changes. And over time, different groups of people move in. And rather than being hospitable, rather than engaging these people with the gospel, the church just says, you're not welcome here. And we don't like the fact that our neighborhood changed, and so we're just going to lock the doors. And we're not going to welcome anybody from the community here because we don't like what's happened to our little community. That's a dying church. You probably don't want to be a part of that either, because in a few years they're going to be gone. They really are. Any church that's not welcoming, people from the neighborhood, not engaging them with evangelism, not trying to win people to Christ who are their neighbors, they're dead. They're going to be dead as Julius Caesar in just a little while. And so that's just one of those places do you really want to go, waste your time and your effort there, trying to convince people to do something they should have been doing, the Bible tells them to do, and yet they've refused to do it because of sinfulness. I just don't know if that's a good place to be. Anyways, well, those are the 10 plus 1 symptoms of an unhealthy church. I hope you're not in an unhealthy church. And every church has some dysfunction. Every church has some unhealthy elements in it. And there's a whole lot more unhealthy symptoms than just these 11 that I've given you. But part of that is because we're sinful people and we bring our dysfunction and our unhealthiness into the church. And the Lord is patient with us and He works with us. And so just because you encounter something like some of these things are deal breakers. Some of them are not. It may mean the Lord's saying, don't go here, or it may be He's saying, you need to come here, but be aware of what's going on. And I'm going to use you to change this church over time. And so, God may have a job for you. But that's the 11 symptoms of an unhealthy church that I want to give you today. I hope you've enjoyed this. If you have, please, again, like us, subscribe or hit the bell, and we would be so grateful if you did that. I hope the Lord blesses you. Have a great day, and I'll see you next time on the Church Files.